Hey everyone, Chris Sawyer here for the Varietal Show. We're going to do a little sneak peek of a very special show that I've got running coming up in June. This is Epoch wines, and this is definitely the pink stuff. It's so good. I have my great friend Jordan Fiorentini with me, and Jordan is the winemaker here in Paso Robles at Epoch. This is, I wanted everyone to see not only how cool this pink wine is and talk about that for a minute and the white wine, but just look at your art back here. This is a very artistic woman who came from Georgia to Paso Robles. And what a trip this is. You know, I love this is her office, by the way. Tell everyone a little bit about what the heck brought you to the West Coast.
Wine. A long time ago. Wine.
Yeah, wine.
So I went to school in New England. I grew up in Atlanta, and I just wanted to work a harvest for fun. And then I was going to go figure out what I was really doing with my life. But then I decided when I was working harvest in Napa back then, which I don't want to date myself, but yeah. I almost probably should.
Yeah, Kimberly Nichols, Markham Winery, woohoo!
1999,
yeah.
The heyday of Merlot. Yeah. Before Sideways came out. So yeah, I worked a harvest in Napa and then decided to go to graduate school for winemaking, and then kind of the rest is history.
And here you are. Right. We are looking at York Mountain right now. We're going to be doing a little show later there this evening, and we're looking right at basically your house and the place that I'm staying, which is up here on the hill. This is an amazing winery to come visit here in Paso Robles. There's a lot of great producers here. Everyone knows Justin and Tablas Creek and Eberly. And, you know, you're one of the newer brands. I mean, you've been here for almost 20 years, but I mean, it's really something that really exemplifies what I think about when I think about Paso. It's not just about Cabernet at all. It's actually about the Rhone varieties, and we love the Hospice de Rhone events when they happen here in Paso Robles. So that's why we thought we'd taste a couple of these things right now. And this is the Rosé. This is the new 2020 that's just coming out into the marketplace. And it says Rosé right there in art form. You did all this art. I mean, tell everyone a little bit about what is the thematic thing here going on. You got veracity, you've got sensibility, you've got everything. It's like you're inside the mind of the grape.
Totally. This is my, I call them visual tasting notes. We call them impressions. And I started doing them with the release of our 2010 wines, which was my first vintage at Epoch. And I do them just for the reds, and it's basically a visual depiction of my palate. I divide my palate into a 4-part quadrant, and then I draw the texture of the wine, the sensation of the wine as it flows across my palate and folds back. Yeah. And that was just easier because I'm very texturally based. Yeah. It's easier for me to draw the texture than to explain it. Plus, if you explain texture, if you're like, oh, it's touching the front right part of my, it's so boring to talk about or write about, but looking at it is definitely more visual.
Absolutely. So, and this is super visual right here behind us.
Yes,
I mean,
these are some of my older ones.
Really cool. So this is inside her mouth too. So this is crazy. Not just the grape, but it's exploding inside of her mouth.
If you get our wines too on our mailing list, you'll get these like little cards that talk about the technical data of the wine, but on the back there'll be the drawing. So this is a 2017 Mourvèdre that I just came out.
So cool. So what's in the, this is a blend, you know, this is definitely what you like to do, and this has got Mourvèdre, Grenache, and there's some Syrah in here, and so it's kind of what we would call the GSM. All of these grapes are in there, but Mourvèdre is the dominant one.
Yeah, so this wine we've been making for quite a while, and it kind of floated at the beginning. I always thought Rosé had to be Grenache driven in my brain, but then there was one vintage, I think it was probably 2012 or 13, where Mourvèdre was the leading lady, whole cluster press Mourvèdre, and it just made the most phenomenal Rosé, and I've been using that same block to be the basis for the wine since then. The Grenache and Syrah, Grenache plays a much bigger role normally than Syrah does in this blend. However, in the 20, the Syrah is a little bit more. There's a 74% Mourvèdre and looks like 14 Syrah and 12 Grenache. So always want it super light and crisp, but then the vintage dictates the rest.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it's got a lot of structure to it too. This is not a light, just by the pool kind of sipper. There's a lot of things going on in here, and I think as a sommelier, it's really what I love about this wine. It's just so many things I can think about that I would pair with it, especially going into summertime right now and into the fall. You know, you've got everything from doing paellas on a big pan outside in a, you know, on a little burner outside, to a lot of grilled foods. And chicken, which really kind of stands out right here. But also, you know, sometimes where you have burgers, and this is just, you kind of want something that's just refreshing instead of big, and it really works well. And then you get into the fall, and what do we have? Heirloom tomatoes. Of course, you've got all these things with burrata cheese and fresh, you know, like basil and everything. And I know I'm going to make you hungry. We will go to lunch later, but don't worry about it. Yeah, but I just think that this is just, you know, why a great rosé stands out from the others. You know, it's just, there's good, refreshing rosés, and then there's ones that really have some girth to them and some veracity, as you would call it.
Exactly.
Veracity.
That's funny that you say that, because this wine is kind of the alter ego of our red wine called Veracity, which is a GSM that's also Bourbon based. So they're kind of like the two sides of the grapes. But I do agree where I think a fine rosé, you can have it cold and you kind of just porch pound it if you want. But if you let it warm up and you see all the nuances as well, it's a serious wine.
Very serious, and it's just great to drink it. So speaking of which, we do have to move along because we've got to get up to that hill eventually today. And we do have one white wine too, and this is kind of your new blend. This is just coming out too. This is a beautiful bottle. Excuse me, everyone. Right there. This is the new white, as it says right there in art form, white. And this is a really great blend. There's some Grenache Blanc in here. There's some Viognier. What's the other?
Roussanne.
Roussanne. Okay. So you've got three of the most masterful white grapes ever grown in the face of the planet, in my opinion, and especially in the Rhone Valley, which we love so much. But this is a great aromatic treat.
So really young.
Pretty.
We just bottled it along with the rosé. So where the rosé is meant to be drunk, you know, within that year, the white can definitely age. But the Grenache Blanc, we're in Paso, which has lots of warm summer sun, but the Grenache Blanc always tastes super fresh and acid driven.
Yep.
And so that's kind of the basis of the wine, is to keep it fresh and really bright along the palate. Goes with lots of great foods, which this is the one I know that Soms go crazy for because of the pairings that are so difficult normally become easier with this wine.
Well, first thing that you talk about is freshness. You know, it's got a lot of that fresh melon kind of note. It's a little exotic. There's a white peach. There's definitely that little underlying note of apricot, which is definitely there. Apricot was pretty big back in Georgia too, right? Yeah.
We love the peaches.
Love the peaches. Go figure, peaches in Georgia. But you know, such a great body and length on it too. I think that's the most important thing. Is like, it's not just what's happening in the mouth. It's like how you remember it, because it's cascading down your throat, and it's so good.
And this wine, again, it'll be representative of our vineyards, but also the vintage. So 2020 was a warmer year, so the wine's a little bit fuller than normal, but like you still get that, I think, the crazy minerality too that comes off of West Paso. With the proximity to the ocean. Yeah,
and that's the other thing too. So York Mountain here is a very legendary spot, and we're going to talk about that later in the show. When you guys tune into that, you'll really get a piece of the pie about how Paso really started. It's really about this mountain right here, and it's actually, last night I got the opportunity to go out to Cambria, and Cambria is about 20 miles by the car, but as the crow flies, it's probably about 12 miles directly west of here, and that's where the ocean is, and it's just right there. And it's amazing to watch the fog come in here. It reminds me so much of Sonoma County, especially Sonoma Coast, up near Fort Ross, Seaview kind of appellation up there. It looks a lot like it. I mean, believe it or not, I never really noticed it until last night when I was driving out there and really watching the fog come in, going, my God, this looks familiar. But you know, there's a warmthness to this air here too, and I always feel like this is one of those dry airs.
Right.
There's something about Paso that's dry air. You don't necessarily sweat here. It's just kind of dry.
Yeah,
But
it's
you're
windy
hot.
and dry in
Yeah.
Paso, yeah.
But it's not really. You're not sweating. You know, it's kind of different. It's not humid. It's the opposite of being humid. It's just dry.
So it's the opposite of Atlanta.
Yeah, it is exactly. I wasn't gonna go there, but she did.
It's the opposite.
But you know, and I think that these kinds of refreshing wines are so useful, not only here but anywhere, especially during summertime and going into the fall, because they really go with a lot of things. And with for me, you know, a couple things that I think about right now is asparagus soup. And sometimes when you have a really good one, they're hard to pair, don't get me wrong, but I think this one could really actually go with it if it's creamy based one, just because the texture, everything, it's got great acidity, it's bright, it's fresh. So many of the canned you know, things that we used to have in the old days, canned peaches and everything, that's been replaced by going to farmers markets and buying fresh peaches. And I feel like that's a big deal too. Now we're talking about having peaches in salads, and of course this is going to work. You know, so we've got a lot of things out there. Sometimes when you're doing fruit salsas too for that chicken, you know, maybe that's what you need is this right here. Just saying. But this is a pretty epic moment here, and this is Epic Winery, and I'm thanking you for joining us. And Jordan, thank you so much for hosting me. And,
It's a pleasure.
And it's so fun. We always have such a great time together. But you know, if you are ever in the Paso area, you have to visit Jordan and this winery. It's amazing. It's right off of 46 West, which goes out to Cambria, and it goes along the line with, you know, the Niners and Peachy Canyon places here. And Talbot's Creek is only, as crow flies, about 3 miles that way. So that's their crow flies. It takes a little bit longer than that. But this is just an amazing area, and every time I get the opportunity to get down here, I'm definitely stopping by, and it's been fun so far. More to come. Thanks for tuning into this little small part of the Varietal Show, and we will be back later today. Cheers.